new album is our 14th album. It's titled E. Can be E phonetically from the runic alphabet. The rune itself is called, the runic alphabet is the alphabet of, it's the Old Norse alphabet before the Latin alphabet was introduced. So you could say that it's in the same way as the hieroglyphs were the Egyptian culture's alphabet, the runes were the alphabet of the Vikings, to put it in a tabloid fashion. It has at least 3 levels, this alphabet, like so many other alphabets. It has the being utilized for writing, as people started with way back, Bronze Age and before that.
It's like the devil is trying to ruin our entry. We've had a lot of, I would say, weird titles. We've had some words we've invented ourselves. We've had a few titles I would dare to call a bit pretentious. Doesn't necessarily have to be negative. Being a bit pretentious sometimes. It's good. And then I guess the common denominator for all these other titles were that they were quite long and some of them were tongue twisters. So it just felt really refreshing to be able to have short, very in-your-face titles. And the concept of this album was found through the word that is known in our alphabet, Latin alphabet, as E. Also the most used letter in the English alphabet, in the language. And in the runic alphabet, the Old Norse alphabet, the runes, it's called Evas, E-H-W-A-Z, which translates into horse. And that might sound a little bit odd, like how would horse be the concept of an album? It's not really that. It's about horse symbolizing the partnership between a human and something outside or inside this human being. It's about recognizing that no matter how individualistic, how strong, how alone you are, you're always depending on something. Even the misanthropes and the neo-nihilists depends on something they have to hate. They're nothing without with a counterpart. So that's what the title is reflecting. It's everything's coming out of that letter of the rune E, about partnership, about duality, about interdependence. So I would say that it's quite a positive concept for once in the enslaved capital. If other people want to have other associations like energy or something like that, that's fantastic. The only thing I haven't thought about is ecstasy and electrical cars. Ecstasy, the drug, and electrical cars. Interesting, but not really for me. It's a very interesting question. I think it's and this is all just my personal theories, but I think a lot of this is just answered by convenience. Convenience, availability, or time on your hands, if you want, or boredom, to say it in a very crude way. I think that I might oversimplify, because some of these people had philosophies and even semi-religious or maybe total religious. There was still a few real Satanists in there, and I guess there still are. But then we're talking about a handful of people who have a proper, thought through and really devoted, dedicated sort of hatred and a real desire to tear down things or to create the end or whatever. But I think most of it it's the same as the research showing that in our countries, in the Nordic countries, where women are allowed to pick whatever occupation they want to, and they tend to drift towards typical occupations for women, like traditional women occupations, while in oppressed countries they have a tendency to drift towards more, let's say, controversial types of work. I think it's the core of what people are. It's like the highest suicide rates are in Japan, Norway, Finland.
I think there's, a mix. I just want to, move away from the statistics, or while we wait for the updated ones, because that's really interesting, because that's such a big part of popular belief about those suicidal rates. But what I think is the point is that our part of the world, the Scandinavian countries, and partly, I guess, some of the Americas, is also come to a point where survival or the need to improve one's life situation is so far removed from reality that you really have time for these intricate philosophical questions. It's like self-awareness on steroids in a sense, and I think then it's not strange that young people and or whatever have these ideas that maybe there is no need for this and these people and so on, and that mankind itself is a disease and all that stuff. It's just, in a sense, I guess, you can't really argue against it, because there's a lot of wrong things with mankind and people and all that stuff. But I'm just saying that going back to the beginning is that even those people who say that their entire life is based on a wish to be just left alone and have everybody else disappeared, even that is based in a codependency. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, that's why when I say that this concept on the new album of codependency and recognizing sort of the partnership that's all around us, no matter how alone we try to be, that for me that's perceived as a sort of a positive twist on the Enslaved catalog. It's because of the time when it comes, there's a lot of, the catalog is full of albums that's focusing on being strong, individualism, believing in yourself and all that. And that's still valid, but I guess we've arrived at the point where it's important to recognize that there's a dependency in a positive sense on people and forces around and within yourself. I would say that this is the main focus of the album. But do not get me wrong. It's not about accepting anything and everything as a possible sort of companion or whatever you want to call it. But it's about recognizing those things that are truly, if it's your immediate circle of friends, your family, your band, whatever. Forces within yourself, forces in nature, magical, mythological forces. It's about strengthening those ties. Yes, I do definitely agree. I see the world's sort of value philosophical storage as being more or less pulverized, to be honest. The music is, I think, it feels really fresh, the take on the music this time. Of course, it always does. You used to that artist saying that the last one is the best one, but I think we have a quite reflected view on the albums, and I think what has happened this time is that we have taken all of the path that we are starting out on the album and finished them more or less. Going back in our catalog, I think you could see, for a person that's followed Enslaved, that there's a lot of 2 and 3 albums that belongs together in a sense. That they have sort of a yin-yang vibe to them, like Vertebrae, Axioma, Frost, Eld, and so on. That 2 or 3 albums complement each other, and together they become sort of a complete cycle or whatever, musically and conceptually. I think in Times, the previous album, we started something new, which is attempting to go full circle in one album. And I think we continued this and taken this a bit further. I think we even incorporated a little bit of musical elements that we haven't done before. Always, man.
Okay.
If we didn't ask him to do it, we would have to be afraid every time we went to bed for it. This time, we talked about this concept of duality, dependence, partnership. And he actually, for the first time, and we work with him now since Monumention 2001, he came to the meeting with a suggestion for a finished cover, which sort of scared us, because we always started off with a blank page and then worked from that. This time he came with like a finished sketch, and everything was about just really going into detail on how to finish it. So we like to think, and we do think, both me and Grutle and Truls, that this is because we've now come to a place where we can convey our thoughts about the concept so directly to him. But of course it is always a little bit scary and things go too easy.
It's I think there's a difference between, or at least I don't know if it's a difference, but you could say that they both exist: magical escapism and magical realism. And I think metal has both of them. That it can, in the same way as other constructive, functional, or constructive / deconstructive, at least it's a functional way, expression of art, in the sense that it can take people out of reality and deal with real topics in wherever we go when we escape reality. It's really hard to this feels like a 20-page essay, to be honest. It's an extremely good question, and why does it work? Because it does really work. The metal community is extremely the distance between the level of reality and the level of functioning is pretty astounding if you think about it. Because you have a lot of it's so far removed from society in one sense, but the other sense it's so relevant for society, if that makes any sense. It's very relevant, and I think I'd like to quote some of my friends that told me why they like metal so much, and what they said is that it doesn't really matter where you come from, who you are, where you look. You come in, what do you do? And then you say, I'm a fan, and then you're accepted. It's as easy as that. Can you think about any other social sort of construction that's as accepting as metal? It's pretty fantastic. Now I'm talking about the basic idea of metal, not about those fucking mutating political subgenres or whatever. But the idea of metal in general, and that we're all believing in, is extremely accepting. But it's also at the same time very punishing. It just says you have to be loyal to metal. It is totally rare. Nowadays the ideal seems to be to express belief in whatever gives you gain, then that's the problem. It's like I think if you look to the US with Trump, it's very interesting, at least, to see that this guy 10 years ago said that if he was running for president, he would do it with the Republicans because they were all idiots. And they're all seen it, and they're roasted for it. I think that says a lot about our rights today. Yeah, just to shorten it down, telling me after to hurry up here. Today, it doesn't really matter. If someone says something and it's proven that it's a lie, people don't care anymore. I think that's the main, that's the symptom that needs to be treated. It needs to start mattering again, what people say. And I think, the metal culture is a good place to start learning. I think you're very right about that. I think we need modernism, but post-modernism is actually one step too far.